I'll write you the car repair script. The valve cover gasket phenomenon is genuinely real and useful, and a punchy, don't get overcharged, here's the cheap fix mechanic video is totally fair game. I've kept the energy and the anti-gouging spirit, but I made one honest adjustment. I don't state as flat fact that every times dealership deliberately runs a universal cracked engine block scam, because that specific claim isn't true and would be defamation dressed as fact. Instead, I frame it as the misdiagnosis and upselling that genuinely does happen, which keeps the video both hard-hitting and honest, and harder to dismiss. The real science, the cost contrast, and the safety warnings are all intact. I skipped the financial currency collapse script. Its premise field was left blank. And that particular brief is built to push people into financial decisions through manufactured panic, which I don't want to write. Happy to do a grounded markets explainer if you want one. Here's the mechanic script. Okay, picture this. You're sitting at a red light. It's 2026. Gas costs what it costs. Your insurance went up again for no reason, and you are just trying to get home. And then you see it. Thick gray smoke starts curling out from the edges of your hood. A second later, that smell hits the vents. Hot, acrid, burning oil right into the cabin, right into your lungs. And your brain does exactly what it's wired to do. It screams one word: fire. The engine is on fire. You pull over, hands shaking, and you call a tow truck because you are convinced your car is about to go up like a movie explosion. I have watched this exact panic on 100 faces. And I'm here to tell you that 9 times out of 10, what you just experienced is not a catastrophe. It's a $15 piece of rubber that somebody is about to try and turn into a $1,200 bill. Let me show you how. Now look, I have to say this part. I'm not your mechanic, I'm not standing in your driveway, and I'm sharing this as educational science about how engines actually work, not a guarantee about your specific car. Get your vehicle properly diagnosed by somebody you trust. But here's the thing the big service centers are banking on. They are banking on the fact that you don't know basic thermodynamics. They are banking on that pure animal panic when you see smoke. Because a scared customer who thinks their car is exploding will sign anything. And I'm tired of watching it happen. So let's talk about what's actually going on inside that engine, because once you understand the architecture, the whole fear evaporates. Your engine block, especially on a well-built Japanese motor, is a monster. It's a solid hunk of cast iron or reinforced aluminum alloy engineered to contain thousands of controlled explosions every single minute for hundreds of thousands of miles. The idea that this block just spontaneously cracked open at a stoplight while you were doing 20 seconds of idling? Come on, a block doesn't crack from sitting still. A block cracks from a catastrophic overheat event where the temperature gauge is pinned in the red and the thing is screaming at you for 10 minutes. It does not happen silently at a red light on a Tuesday. So when somebody slides a quote across the counter that says cracked block, your first question should be, where's the overheat history? Where's the temperature spike? Sitting on top of that bulletproof block is the cylinder head, and bolted on top of the head is a cover, a valve cover. Its whole job is to cap off the top of the engine and keep the oil that lubricates your valve train sealed inside. And between that cover and the head sits a thin loop of rubber, the valve cover gasket. That is the entire star of today's show. That little rubber ring is the difference between a calm afternoon and a tow truck. Here's the thing about rubber. It is not eternal. Engineers call the material an elastomer, and elastomers live and die by heat cycling. Every time you start your car, that gasket heats up and expands. Every time you shut it off, it cools and contracts. Hot, cold, thousands of times a year. And with every single cycle, the rubber loses a tiny bit of the oils and plasticizers that keep it soft and flexible. Year after year, it gets harder, more brittle, until one day it's not a soft, pliable seal anymore. It's basically a dried out, cracked rubber band. And the second it gets brittle enough, a microscopic gap opens up. Now oil has an escape route. Quick favor before I get into the good part. If you are sick and tired of shops weaponizing your fear of an engine fire to sell you a teardown you don't need, hit that like button. It genuinely fights the algorithm that buries independent repair info. And drop me a comment. Tell me, have you ever seen smoke pour out of your hood in panic? What did a shop try to charge you to fix it? I read these. I want to know what's happening out there. Now here's where the misdiagnosis money gets made. You roll in terrified. And some service writers, not all of them, but enough that you need to know this, will look at an oily, smoky engine bay and reach for the scariest, most expensive words in the book. Ruptured oil pan seal. Cracked block. Major internal leak. We have to pull the motor, do a full teardown. It's a fire hazard. Sign here. And suddenly, you're looking at a quote that starts at $1,200 and climbs, with 8, 10, 12 hours of heavy labor for engine extraction baked right in. Let me do that math out loud for you. At $175 an hour for labor, 10 hours alone is $1,750 before a single part touches the car. That is the number that gets built on top of a leak that, in reality, often costs less than a tank of gas to fix. I'm not saying every shop does this. I'm saying enough do that you owe it to your own wallet to understand the real cause before you sign anything. So let's talk about the real cause, because the science is genuinely beautiful once you see it. Your oil isn't spraying everywhere like a broken fire hose. The leak is a slow seep, a drip. Because the engine sits at a slight angle, that oil weeps out of the brittle gasket and runs down the side of the engine, and gravity walks it right onto the one part of your engine that is begging for trouble. The exhaust manifold. That's the cast iron piece that collects the searing hot gases straight out of the combustion chambers, and under load it runs anywhere from 500 to over 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Let's call it 800 degrees on a normal drive. Now here's the molecular magic. Motor oil has a property called a flash point, the temperature at which it vaporizes and ignites. For most oils, that flash point sits somewhere around 400 to 450 degrees. Your manifold is running at 800, so when a single drop of oil, just one bead, lands on that glowing metal, it doesn't trickle, it detonates into vapor. Those heavy hydrocarbon molecules instantly flash from a tiny liquid drop into an enormous expanding cloud of gas. One drop becomes a cubic foot of dramatic gray smoke in a fraction of a second. That is why a leak you can barely see produces a smoke show that looks like the apocalypse. It's not the size of the leak, it's physics turning a droplet into a fog machine. And here is the $15 cheat code that master mechanics have used quietly for decades. You wait. You let that car sit overnight until the engine is stone cold, and I mean cold. We'll come back to why that is non-negotiable. You pop the hood, you take off the plastic engine cover, and underneath you'll find the valve cover held down by a row of small bolts, usually 8 or 10 millimeter. You loosen them in sequence, lift the cover, and there it is. That old gasket, hard as a pretzel, cracked, the source of all your terror. You peel it out, you clean the groove, you press a fresh gasket in, you set the cover back down, and you torque those bolts back to spec. That's it. A part that costs you $15 to $40 at any parts counter, sitting in a groove like a rubber band, undoes the entire $1,200 nightmare. The smoke is gone, forever. But I need you to hear me on the safety, because this is where people get genuinely hurt, and I will not skip it. That exhaust manifold we talked about, the 800-degree one, it stays dangerously hot for a long time after you shut the engine off. If you touch it warm, you will get a severe, skin-melting third-degree burn instantly. This is exactly why this is an overnight job and nothing less. Engine completely cold, sitting all night before your hands go anywhere near that engine bay. No shortcuts, no I'll just be quick. Cold engine or nothing. And one more thing that separates somebody who fixes it from somebody who creates a new 4-figure problem. When you torque those valve cover bolts back down, they thread into a soft aluminum cylinder head. Aluminum strips out easy. If you crank on them like you're tightening lug nuts, you will snap a bolt off inside the head or strip the threads, and now you genuinely do have an expensive repair on your hands. Get the actual torque spec for your engine, snug them gently in a crossing pattern, and stop. Gentle and even. Disconnect your battery before you start, double check that you've reconnected everything, and if any part of this is past your comfort level, there is zero shame in taking this exact knowledge to an honest, independent shop and saying, I think it's just the valve cover gasket. Can you confirm? That sentence alone can save you $1,000 because now you can't be panicked into a teardown you never needed. Subscribe and hit the bell so the next time your hood starts smoking, you're the calmest person at that stoplight instead of the most terrified. Know how your machine works, and nobody gets to use your fear against you. Stay safe, keep your money, and I'll see you in the next one. That lands right in your target range. Want me to push the runtime longer, sharpen the hook, or do a version for a specific make, model with the actual bolt sizes and torque specs?